All right, so we're going to kind of continuing with 7.4. Have some more questions with rhombus and rectangle and so forth. Um, so if we have a rhombus, so remember that the diagonals are perpendicular and the diagonals bisect the opposite angles. Okay, so if I told you that that angle was 28 degrees and that let's say AE equals 6 and BE E equals 9. Okay, so AE is 6 and BE is 9. And I want you to find all 8 of those angles, and then also DE and EC. So it may seem like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, but let's kind of go through it. So angle 1, angle 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can go in any order that you want. But so the first thing that, like, remember that this is a parallelogram. So opposite sides are congruent, well, all 4. Opposite angles are congruent. That's going to be helpful. Diagonals bisect each other. And consecutive angles add up to 180. So in addition to the diagonals perpendicular and the diagonals bisect opposite angles. So I look at first, well, DE, well, if BE is 9 and the diagonals bisect each other, then DE has to be 9 also. And so if A to E is 6, well, then E to C is also 6. Okay, so it could ask what's AC. Okay, so if it said AC, then you would say 12, because 6 plus 6. Okay, all right. Now, we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, or on Tuesday, but diagonals bisect each other. So if this is 28 down here on the bottom, then angle 1 is also 28 degrees. And if opposite angles, so the angles up by the letter B, opposite angles are congruent in a parallelogram, and if it bisects, well, then 4 and 5 are also 28 degrees. So all 4 angles along that same diagonal are going to be the same. Okay, so now this could be a little bit more tricky, but I also, so how do I figure out 2, 3, and 7, and 6? Because there's nothing like there. Well, you kind of have to go to number 8. Diagonals are perpendicular, so angle 8 is 90 degrees. So this one is 90, and angle 5 is 28. So we have this triangle on the right side. And so I can do 90 plus 28 is 118. And then subtract that from 180. And angle 6 would be 62 degrees. Okay, so looking at this triangle here. And then everything else should fall into place. Well, if it bisects, angle 7 is 62 degrees, and angle 2 is 62 degrees, and angle 3 is 62 degrees. Okay. So it starts off maybe a little bit daunting because there's so much information, but it'll end up being good. All right, so let's look at rectangle 1. So again, we have all the opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary, and diagonals bisect each other. But then in a rectangle, diagonals are also congruent. Okay, so if excuse me. So if we had the same kind of deal, A, B, C, D, E, so if that one is 55 degrees, and it says that, let's see, AC is 14. Okay, so let's find DE. Let's find angle. I'm going to number them. It's easier that way. Okay, let's see if we can find all those angles. So, angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so again, if you keep in mind that this is a parallelogram, so opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent. The consecutive angles are supplementary, and that diagonals bisect each other. That diagonals bisect each other is a big help in this problem. So, okay, AC equals 14. That means DB equals 14, the whole diagonal. But if they bisect each other, then D to E equals 7. So what happens is that side, or that segment, that segment, that segment, that segment are all congruent because the whole thing is congruent, and if they cut it in half, bisect, it cuts in half, well, then they're all 7. So that is huge because if we have this triangle right here with the 55 degrees, I'm going to redraw it over here. So I kind of turned it. Well, that's an isosceles triangle. So that means that the base angles are the same. So angle 1 is 55 degrees. Okay, so if that's the case, remember a rectangle has right angles. So angle 2, I can just do 90 minus 55 because I know that whole thing has to be 90, and I get 35 degrees. And angle 3, there's an isosceles triangle up on the top now. It's a lot skinnier, or stretched out rather. So I do have, you know, here's a part that's congruent, here's a part that's congruent. So opposite angles are congruent. So the 2 and the 3 have to be congruent. Well, 3 and 4 together are 90. I think you can see a pattern start to happen here. Angle 5, that's another isosceles triangle. Okay, angle 6, that makes a 90. Okay, and so 7 and 8 are up in the middle. So if you kind of come back to this picture over here, well, 55 and 55, you know, that's 110. Minus 180 is 70. So angle 8 has to be 70 degrees. And angle 7 is a linear pair. So I can subtract 70 and 180 and get 110. You could also look at it as an exterior angle. Angle 7 is an exterior angle to that darker triangle on the left. So it's the other two angles added together. Okay, so you'll have a question that's on a rhombus, a question that's on a rectangle, and a question that's on a square. Remember, a square is all of it, so you can kind of combine the two things that we talked about like today. Okay, and you won't have as much stuff to figure out, but and they don't number the angles, they use the letters, so pay attention to that. All right, have a great Thursday. We'll see you guys tomorrow.